Hey there. I noticed that you guys really loved the Frankenstein dramatic reading, so I thought I would give you more of what you are enjoying. Today we're going to dive into a really dramatic text, a very dramatic excerpt from Frankenstein. It's the moment when the monster comes to life and Victor's reaction to all of this. We're also going to look at some of the themes. I'm going to pose some questions and I really would like you to get involved. I'd like you to interact. Now, I do understand that Frankenstein is such a fascinating book, but maybe even if you are at an advanced level, it's a little bit tricky to understand, which is why I want to walk you through it. I want you to fully understand and enjoy the brilliance of this novel. Now, before we get started, I would like to know if you could create life like Victor, would you? And what would the risks be? Please join the conversation. So if you could create life like Victor did, would you do it? Just comment yes or no below. And I said we're going to read an excerpt and it's a gloomy November night. Okay, so it's winter, there's flickering candlelight, there's a stormy weather. And all of these elements, the weather, the atmosphere, they mirror or they are a reflection, right, of Victor's anxiety. And they also foreshadow the chaos that's to come, which is what's so brilliant about books and authors and writing, the foreshadowing, creating the scene. So I'd like to know, how does the setting affect the mood of the story, and why do you think Mary Shelley chose this dark, stormy atmosphere as opposed to a bright summer's day? I mean, to be quite honest, I think a bright summer's day could have also worked because it would have been this dramatic contrast, right? And we're going to read the excerpt and you're going to see Victor's reaction, and I want you to think about, was he justified in his reaction? But we're going to come back to all of that later. But also, as I'm reading, I want you to pay attention to what did Victor initially think that was really beautiful about this creature. And I always say that I like things to reflect the real world, our 21st century, what's going on in our world at the moment. So I want you to think about what advances in technology actually mirror this situation. Are there any that you can think of? I know in the last video I mentioned Optimus, and I still agree that Optimus is something that we should approach with caution, even though, I mean, I've been pretty straightforward about it. I would like to buy one, maybe even two. Now, if you are ready, we're going to dive into the reading. But please check the description and the comments for some of the questions that I would like you to bear in mind while you are watching and listening to this dramatic reading about Frankenstein's monster. And if you're ready, let's go. All right, let's dive into our excerpt. It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. So his toils, his labor, his hard work. And I beheld, I looked at the accomplishments, the result. So it was on a dreary night, not bright, not sunny, gloomy, overcast, lots of shadows. Okay, it really does set the mood. That I beheld, I saw the accomplishment, the result of my toils, toil and labor. This is Old English, but they often go together. So you'll hear my labors, my toils, with an anxiety that almost amounted to agony. I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. So he's anxious. The anxiety is so great, it almost feels like agony. And I collected the instruments. I picked up all my instruments and I want to infuse a spark. It's almost like giving it this boost of energy, electricity, plugging it in. and this lifeless thing that lay at my feet. So the monster is not alive at this point. This is the moment of creation, right? It was already 1 in the morning. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out. But when, by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open, it breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. So let's go through this one slowly. It was already 1 in the morning, 1 a.m. The rain pattered. Okay, the sound of the rain dismally, so dismal, sad. It's nothing. There's no beautiful, upbeat, lively vocabulary or words here. Against the panes, the window panes, the glass. And my candle was nearly burnt out. So the candle is not full. It's almost finished. It was nearly burnt out. So you can see this moment of almost like death, okay, of the candle. And then there's this glimmer of the half-extinguished light. Now think of a candle that's not burning brightly. So the light that you're going to get, it's very low light, half-extinguished light. It's not bright, okay? And I saw the dull yellow, not white eyes. I think we've all got, you know, bright white eyes full of excitement. If you look at cartoon characters, they always have these big eyes and bright eyes. But this creature had these dull yellow eyes, and the eyes open. And it breathed hard, the first breath, and a convulsive, like convulsions, okay, motion, agitated its limbs. It's not like Sleeping Beauty rising from the deep sleep. No. This is something very different. There's this agitation, very unpleasant, very chaotic kind of motion, agitated its limbs. So it's not even, the writer doesn't even say the limbs moved. It's like the motion agitated its limbs. So the motion is controlling the limbs rather than the limbs making the motion. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like this creature has no control over its limbs. The motion is controlling the creature. It's this, you know, upside down reversal, which is very, very interesting. How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe? Okay, so it's a catastrophe. He thought he was creating something beautiful, and now he realizes it's a catastrophe. Or how delineate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form. I tried to create. Form, create, endeavored, tried. And this wretch, not this beautiful creature, but this wretch, and infinite pains. I worked really hard. So it goes back to that word toil. I toiled. I took such pains. I took such interest. I was so particular. Infinite pains. I worked really hard on this. His limbs were in proportion. Okay, that's a good thing, right? And I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful. Great God! So obviously he wasn't beautiful. His yellow skin. So we go back to the yellow eyes, yellow skin. Okay, so not pink and rosy and no, this is yellow. Okay, his yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. So the skin was not really covering this ugliness, the muscles and the arteries. So you probably can see the blue and the green of the veins coming through this yellow. His hair was of a lustrous black, oh, I hope like mine, and flowing. Okay, so this is good stuff, I hope. His teeth of a pearly whiteness. Okay, good here. All good, right? Pearly white teeth. Nice. But these luxuriances. So there was this beauty, this luxury, this amazing long dark hair and pearly, perfect white teeth. But they were a horrid contrast with his watery eyes. So it created an even bigger contrast. Perhaps if everything had been ugly, then you wouldn't have noticed the ugliness, right? But then you've got almost beauty next to ugliness, then the ugly looks even uglier. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. Okay. Only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes that seemed almost of the same color as the dun white sockets in which they were set. So not bright, glorious white, no, this dun white sockets. His shriveled complexion, like all wrinkled and shriveled. Shriveled, it's when you put your hands in water for a long, long time and they come out and they shrivel. They're not smooth and beautiful. They're all shriveled. Okay, so that's shriveled complexion and straight black lips. Okay, that's like the final thing. Instead of normal lips or full lips, straight black lips, almost like a line. Interesting. The different accidents of life are not so changeable as the feelings of human nature. I had worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. For this, I had deprived myself of rest and health, and he mentions it before. Okay, the toiling, the investment of his time, the infinite pains that he took. He deprived himself of rest and health and pleasure because he was obsessed with creating this creature. So he had this inanimate body and he wanted to give it life, to infuse it with life. You know, we often use infusions when it comes to tea and so on. When you've got different flavors of teas, you have herbal infusions and chamomile infusion and mint infusion. So it's like those herbs add flavor and scent and taste to your tea. So he wanted to bring this to life, this inanimate dead creature, and infuse it with life. It's really beautiful intention. I had desired it with an ardor, with a passion that far exceeded moderation. This wasn't just a job. This was his passion, his life's work. Ardor, we usually use this for romantic relationships. Ardor and passion. Okay, so that's how great was his determination, his investment in this. Okay, very interesting. But now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Now, try to imagine yourself in his shoes. You have worked, you've toiled, you've labored, you've taken infinite pains to create beauty, perfection, a new life. And then a monster arises. Just think about that for a moment. And we're going to dive into some questions because I do want to hear your thoughts about this. And breathless horror, I couldn't even breathe. And disgust filled my heart. Unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, the aspect, the looks, okay? I rushed out of the room and continued a long time traversing my bedchamber, unable to compose my mind to sleep. So what was his reaction? He could not bear to look at this being that he created, the aspect of the being, the physical appearance of the being. He rushed out of the room And then what did he do next? He traversed his bedchamber, his bedroom. What did he do? He paced. He walked up and down, unable to compose my mind to sleep. He couldn't fall asleep. He couldn't quiet his mind. He couldn't get rid of all this anxiety in his mind. He couldn't compose my mind to sleep. He couldn't fall asleep. At length, lassitude succeeded to the tumult I had before endured. And I threw myself on the bed in my clothes. So he just lay down with his clothes on, trying to seek a few moments of forgetfulness. So he just lay down, and all he wanted was to close his eyes and forget the monster he had just seen. But it was in vain. It did not work. I slept indeed, so he did fall asleep, but I was disturbed by the wildest dreams. I thought I saw Elizabeth in the bloom of health walking in the streets of Ingolstadt. So here is this contrast again. Like I said, if you saw Sleeping Beauty, well, here it's Elizabeth in the bloom of health, blooming, rosy cheeks, healthy, walking in the streets of Ingolstadt. Delighted and surprised, I embraced her. It's almost like an escape. But as I imprinted the first kiss on her lips, as I kissed her, they became livid. Livid is usually angry, okay, with the hue of death. Hue, color, okay. Her features appeared to change. And then suddenly, I thought that I held the corpse of my dead mother in my arms. So there's all these strange, weird images. And this Elizabeth to the corpse, it's almost like the monster and the expectation and the creation. And then when it comes to life, the horror, worse than a corpse, okay? And I thought I held the corpse, the dead body of my dead mother in my arms. A shroud enveloped her form. So she's covered in a shroud, in a cloth. And I saw the grave worms, the worms from the grave, okay, crawling in the folds of the flannel. So this shroud, it's flannel, it's cloth, could be linen. And he can see the worms crawling in between this cloth. It's all very creepy, but beautifully written, which is why I chose it. I started from my sleep with horror. So if you start, it's when you wake up with kind of shock. Okay, it's not waking up gently. You start, you get a shock. This happens to me. If I'm asleep and someone walks into the room, I start. I don't know, probably some psychological issue, but it's not waking up and stretch. It's that shock. I started from my sleep with horror. So like I said, it's this intense kind of negative emotion, right? In this case, definitely negative. A cold dew. Dew is the water that you see on the leaves in the morning, the droplets of water. So he's not saying sweat covered my forehead. He's saying a cold dew covered my forehead. So he's got these little beads of moisture on his forehead. My teeth chattered, like really, really cold. And every limb became convulsed. So here there's a repetition of that convulsion, remember? So the author is repeating that image throughout. When, by the dim and yellow light of the moon. So here again, it's not this bright, beautiful white moon. Yellow comes in again. By the dim, dull, dreary. Go ahead, look at or rewind this video and look at all the instances where color is used to evoke emotions. Actually, what I'm going to do at the end of this video, I'm going to just put a screen of this text and you can go through it at your leisure, fully analyze it, maybe even better than I have, and put your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions, your 2 cents in the comments below. So let's go back. By the dim and yellow light of the moon, as it forced its way through the window shutters, nothing is flowing. There's this heaviness forced its way through the window shutters. I beheld the wretch. It's not his creation. It should almost be like a child of his, right? But he's calling it a wretch. I beheld the wretch, the miserable monster whom I had created. And already there's all this language of hatred flowing through. He held up the curtain of the bed. So I'm assuming these are the drapes that covered the bed, or the bed clothes. And his eyes, if eyes they may be called, like they're not even eyes, they're so ugly. If eyes they may be called, he's so dismissive, he's so disappointed, were fixed on me. So if his eyes are fixed on him, he's staring at him. So I hope right now my eyes are fixed on you and the camera, okay? His jaws opened and he muttered some inarticulate sounds. So it wasn't this musical Sleeping Beauty voice that came forth. No, his jaws opened and he muttered some inarticulate sounds. Inarticulate, you cannot understand them, okay? While a grin, okay, big smile, wrinkled his cheeks, but there's nothing cute about it. Normally when someone smiles, there's little dimples, or here the grin wrinkled his cheeks. Look at the language that's used. This is why this book is such a classic. It's written so beautifully, the choice of every single word. I bet if you are an ESL learner, you did not realize maybe the power of a single word. This is why I love reading. There's such power in words. Words can create images, they can create worlds, they can create anything. And you are only limited by the number of words that you know. So let's continue. He might have spoken, but I did not hear. One hand was stretched out, seeming to detain me, to hold me back, to, if we use detain, like the police will detain a suspect, okay? So it's this force out of your control, you being detained, you giving up your freedom. But I escaped and rushed downstairs. What happens next? By the way, I just want to know, if you had been in Victor's shoes, would you have stayed or would you have escaped? Just want to know. I took refuge in the courtyard, so I hid. You take refuge, you hide. You want to be safe, you take refuge, like refugees, right? So if you know the word refugees, refuge. I took refuge in the courtyard belonging to the house which I inhabited. So he went down to the courtyard of the house where he was living, where I remained during the rest of the night. So he refused to even stay in the same house as this creature that he created, now called the wretch and the monster. Where I remained during the rest of the night, where he stayed for the night, walking up and down, pacing in the greatest agitation. There's no peace, there's no calm. He's agitated, listening attentively, catching and fearing each sound as if it were to announce the approach of the demoniacal corpse to which I had so miserably given life. So I want to read that again. I took refuge in the courtyard belonging to the house which I inhabited, where I remained during the rest of the night, walking up and down in the greatest agitation, listening attentively, catching and fearing each sound as if it were to announce the approach of this demon demoniacal corpse, like a corpse already dead, but possessed by a demon. So the only life in this corpse was a demon, to which I had so miserably given life. And oh, how he hates that which he created. I so miserably gave it life. Look at the regret and the anger and all of those emotions. Okay. So, what I'm going to do though, I think is I'm going to put the PDF link in the downloads. So that way you can work through it, and then also you'll get a chance to go through a lot of the questions that I want to dive into now, if you'll indulge me, because more than the reading, I do like the idea of analyzing. So let's talk about some of the things from this reading. Was Victor justified in running away from his creation, or should he have stayed to face it? So first option is yes, he was terrified, he was overwhelmed, so he was justified in running away. And then option B is no, he had a responsibility to the creature he created. So I want to know your thoughts on this. He's the creator of the creature, almost like a mother to a child. So should he have run away, or should he have stayed to be with his creation? Option A, it's okay that he ran away. He was terrified. He was overwhelmed. He couldn't cope. Option B, he should have stayed. He had a responsibility to the creature he created. Also, do you remember what features of the creature did Victor originally think would be beautiful? The lust. So we've got A, yellow skin, sharp teeth, flowing black hair. Don't think it was that one. B, lustrous black hair, pearly white teeth. C, deep eyes and smooth skin. I don't think it's C, because there was a lot of this wrinkled skin all over the place. So if you chose B, perfect. Okay. And what exactly is this excerpt and Victor's horror all about? What does it really reflect? I think it reflects our human fear, our innate human fear of the unknown. Also in the 21st century, and this is so relevant right now, the unintended consequences of scientific ambition. So once again, we go back to Optimus and all of these robots being created, and we don't know what the consequences are going to be. So a question that I'm asking you today is, what modern scientific advances might provoke a similar mix of excitement and fear? Because let's be honest, at first Victor thought this was a great idea. He was really excited about it. But then when he saw the fruits of his labors, when he saw the monster instead of this magical, beautiful being, his reaction was very different. It was fear. And his dream turns into a nightmare, doesn't it? And then there's this guilt and this dread and so many things going on in his mind. And he refers to the creature as a catastrophe instead of a success. And please join the conversation and comment. Do you think it was a catastrophe, or was it a success? What was his aim? What was his goal? To create a living being. So did he succeed? I don't know. You be the judge. But why does he refer to it as a catastrophe? I mean, the way I see it, he had a goal. He wanted to create a living creature, and he created it. But somewhere along the line, he lost control. And this is a deep question. I really want you to think about it. If you were Victor, what would you have done after the creature came to life? Would you have stayed fascinated, supportive? Or would you have fled like Victor did? So if you had been in Victor's shoes, infused life into this creature, it comes to life, it turns into a monster, what would your reaction have been? And do you think that Victor's reaction to this creature was fair or unfair? Just comment fair or unfair in the comments below. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking. And do you think it's right to create life or to attempt to create life knowing the risks that are involved? This is really very interesting. And before we wrap things up today, what do you think Mary Shelley, the author, was trying to say about human ambition and responsibility? Please let me know in the comments below. And I just feel like the best example that I can use today is Optimus, Elon Musk's robot. This is human ambition. We really are pushing the envelope. We are pushing boundaries, but are we crossing boundaries? What's our responsibility when we are creating? It's a very interesting question, isn't it? And like I said, I'm going to include the PDF link in the downloads. Also, I'm just going to let the screen run, okay, for a little bit so you can look through the document, look through the reading, and pay attention to the use of color in creating the scene. I do hope that you are enjoying the book club coming up in January. A little later in January is one of my favorites, The Great Gatsby, and that will be in 2 parts. So there'll be an introduction, and in the second part we will have 3 dramatic excerpts, including the final scene. So spoiler alert. I suggest that you start reading the book maybe after the first reading. And if you want me to dive even deeper into Frankenstein or The Great Gatsby, we're going to do Lord of the Rings, we're going to do some Sherlock Holmes. I'm also going to do a short story interview with one of my students. Anything that you'd like me to do in the future, we welcome all suggestions. So on that note, I'm Nas and I'm a bookworm, and I hope that you are starting to be one too. Thanks for joining me today.